The police has imposed a dusk to dawn curfew in Bayelsa State from 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. for 3 days as the new governor, Dissect, is sworn in, assuming the governorship seat in the state. Earlier, the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, presented the certificate of return to Senator Dissect in Abuja. INEC was also ordered by the court to withdraw the certificate of return issued to the APC candidate. Diri's deputy, Senator Lawrence Wuduro-Jukbo, was also presented with a certificate of return. The Electoral Commission, in a briefing in Abuja, declared the People's Democratic Party, the PDP, winner of the November 16 Bayelsa State governorship elections. What does this mean to the party and the nation's electoral laws? A senior advocate of Nigeria, Norris Quirkers, will join us on this. It's prime time here in Lagos, and this is State of the Nation. Welcome, everyone. Just before we go on the issue of Bayelsa State, which we will try to look at in the course of this show, let's look at this very disturbing situation in the country over the past week and a half. Security in the northern part of the country has gone increasingly worse. The president, Muhammadu Buhari, took a swipe at traditional rulers, saying that they are part of the problem. He enjoined them to give useful information to security officials to assist them in the fight against banditry, insurgency, and other forms of crimes. He said this when he was in Maiduguri, the Borno state capital. Captain Aliu Umar, retired, joins me on State of the Nation, along with Oladende Ario, a security analyst. I want to thank both of you for coming on State of the Nation at this time. The entire north seems to be the theater of war, looking at the northwest in Zamfara State to Katsina State, now brewing in the northern eastern part of the country in Borno, Maiduguri, and that axis. What would you say this is turning out to be when you look at the situations of banditry, starting from Zamfara State in the northwest, and the call for service chiefs to be removed from their offices? Is there a correlation, do you think, when you have the service chiefs on one side, who have always repeatedly said that there are political interferences? Will it make sense when people call out to the government to remove the service chiefs? Let's start with you, Captain Aliu.
Yeah, it's... Good evening. Responding to your question brings about foremostly the nature of, let me call it the conundrum. It's like a football. It's round on all sides. Just as round as it is for the service chiefs, is just as round as it is for the politicians, starting with the president and so forth. So you see there is a conspiracy, a grand conspiracy of intrigues. There's a grand conspiracy of affiliations, loyalties, interests. And all of them are just equally rounded as in a spherical situation. And when you look at it from the observer's perspective, when you look at it from the perspective of, let's say, a politician, you see differently. When you look at it from the perspective of me and you see differently because you're a journalist and I'm an intelligence and security practitioner. But when you look at it from the perspective of that poor man who has to sleep in his mud hut, who is seeking succor, okay, then you begin to see why the service chiefs have to go. And of course, the different interest groups too and pressure groups will jump on that bus and say, listen, let the service chiefs go, okay? So the political divide, the interference, even what the president said in Borno State, he spoke in parables as they always do. For the president to say that, you know that he knows a lot of things that we don't know and he's not saying. If you could say those things, you begin to see why there are no results. If you could say those things, you begin to see why there is lethargy. If you could say those things, you see why it's seemingly intractable. But these politicians actually know more than they're willing to say. Except, of course, where things are not in their interest, then they start threatening us with sound bites like, if I say this and that, Nigeria will boil or burn or roast, you know. But there's a lot they know which is holding, you know, the kind of response the service chiefs should get from them too.
Do you believe the service chiefs should be taken out of office? Do you think we should replace them?
I mean, if you look at Nigeria, the security architecture as a business concern, they are not making profit. You don't retain a team that is not winning. They are not winning. Enough of propaganda, enough of stories and lies. The last interview I had, the Chief of Army Staff, he was saying that at this point, he gets some information which is not known to the public, and that the president at his level also gets more information than him, and that he knows why he won't remove him.
So do you believe that there is political interference?
Massive interference.
So
and
how, if there is massive interference,
Yeah.
how then can the effectivity of the service chiefs, how can we fully, tap into that, knowing very well that there is political interference and that will affect them in performing their duties? Should they be blamed in this process?
When you say should they be blamed, I mean, assuming on this seat you are not delivering value, you will have been removed by Channels TV as an organization. Once they are not delivering value, okay, the system that brought them there has revealed that much. And I don't see, because see, by keeping them there, we're losing money, we're losing men. And life is becoming increasingly difficult and impossible in those axes.
Captain Omar, just before you make comments on that one, I just want to bring out a quote. Okay. And this was said by the Chief of Army Staff. He said that removing the service chiefs will not stop Boko Haram. That point was also submitted by your colleague, Yomi Dare, who is also a retired colonel in the Nigerian army. He said that on this very show that removing the service chiefs will not serve any purpose and it will not stop Boko Haram from carrying out their attacks. Are you on the same page with that statement?
Let me respond and then tell you if I'm on the same page or not. Removing the service chiefs will not what? Solve the problem. Has leaving them there this past year solved it? So the Chief of Army Staff made a two-way parable there. If you say removing you will not stop the problem, we can fairly also ask why it has persisted all this while you're there. The reason is simple. If you know what won't work, it means you know what will work. It's a balance, okay, for those of us who are hermetics. It's a balance. What do I mean by a balance? Cause and effect, up and down. The law of duality. So if it can go your way, it means it can be reversed this way. That's my response to that. But based on what he was saying, I'll tell you something. It's not modest to take part in any gathering beneficially and then feel you are not part of it in any way. A part cannot be different from the whole.
Yeah.
The Chief of Army Staff is Chief of Army Staff on a cabinet. That cabinet itself is, so there is nothing like saying you succeeded or you did not succeed. If people say you don't want it, that's people's response. And if your commander-in-chief says you want it, that's your commander-in-chief's impression of you. But I tell you something, your commander-in-chief has political capital to make. So the general has to understand that you are only what his capital, I mean, you're relevant when you work his capital.
So are you, in other words, saying that the service chiefs now are taking the brunt as a result of the interference by political parties that has stopped them, in a way, from performing at full
when
capacity?
It comes to politics, Nigeria, every service chief is a pawn. And you know what pawns do in chess? They never checkmate. They're expendable, are they not? If you play chess, my fellow chess players there will understand. So when you are there as service chief, you got to weigh the odds too. If you remember Alexander Lebed of the Soviet Union, during the time of perestroika and glasnost that led to the disintegration of Soviet Union and what. He was a fall guy, but he was also a hero and a nationalist.
So what must be done to stop the interference of politicians in issues such as security? Which
Can
is
I
very,
just
very
add to that question? For you to stop political interference, then the service chiefs must be soldiers. They must be professionals. Some of them joined the academy as first-timers. These service chiefs, these football politicians were in diapers. Men of career, men of profession will tell you to sit down and listen and not the other way around. So these guys will continue to be pawns, open to political interference until we start bringing forth generals who are what they are stars.
Because we have to go on a very quick break now. Maybe when we come back, we'll give you an opportunity to also respond to that. In just a moment, you're watching State of the Nation. We'll be back after these messages. Join us again. Welcome back to State of the Nation. We're looking at the security situation, especially in the northern part of the country. I still have with me my two guests, Captain Aliu Umar, retired, as well as Oladende Ario, a security consultant. What must be done to stop political interference, just so that security issues such as this one we're facing will succeed?
Yeah, it's so simple. He had laid the platform. All it takes is for the CNC to act his office. And that's all. Act his office. It's not rocket science. And ensure that what has to be done is done. The chief of army staff said the president knows what to be done. I mean, it's in the public space. I'm not generating it. To that extent, somebody is not doing what's supposed to do. As the commander-in-chief, then you command. And I'm sure if he gives his directives, they will follow. They are not to dictate the way things go. Every report gets to him. So I don't want to believe that people say that he's being misled, he's being misfed. By who? He's not deaf, he's not blind. He must have been reading papers and watching TV and hearing this from the radio.
Is he getting the requisite intelligence, do you think, Captain Aliu? Because
the service chief?
Yes. Is he getting the requisite...
The president?
Yes. Is the president getting the requisite information?
Borno should have told you, Borno, sorry. Yeah, I will know. The date in Borno where the tragedy took place answers your question fairly dispassionately. I'll tell you why. The president visited as soon as he was within our airspace. He headed for, or our land space, he headed for Borno. And you saw what happened. That response, that reception from ordinary random people will now lend lie or truth to all the intelligence he's been receiving. It's one thing for very big men, directors, ministers, heads of ministries, departments, and agencies to write very pleasantly worded reports and put before you, and you read it and take it for real because you've entrusted them with the job to do that. Then you come outside and see an exact antithesis of what the people are, the reports in your office are saying. And you weigh that against the fact that in your elections, you got like 91%, you understand, votes from that same place. So if we were to do random sampling and just close our eyes and gather his supporters, what are the chances that we would have gathered the ones that don't support him in such a place? So randomly for them to have that unanimity or that unison of voice, that's first-class intelligence. That's taking it directly from what? The beehive. So all those his chieftains, I hope they were there following him when he was getting on-ground, real-time intelligence from the pointsmen, the people, those who put you there, those for whom you are there.
But this is a whole operation that is taking place in the northeast part of the country, and it is called the Operation Lafia Dole. Now, if you tow that path, how much of an influence do you think, or what are the successes, if you will, that operation has brought for the people in the northeast?
To the extent that we still have Boko Haram overrunning towns and cities, kidnapping people, killing and maiming people, overrunning even military formations, the operation has not succeeded. It would be very uncharitable to say wholesale that it has failed, but on a score of 100, nobody that knows his onion will give them 50.
Will they ever get to score?
Well, you cannot say they will get score, but if you say that, that means you are not appreciating the efforts of the boys on the field who are facing the fire, who are really giving the service. A lot of videos are going around showing them asking for water. The one I saw yesterday, about 7 of them collapsed because they couldn't get ordinary water. Those are challenges they are facing there, which should never have been in the first place. When we kept saying we have insurgency, terrorism, banditry, and it becomes elongated. Now, we've had this thing for over 10 years now. We should stop deceiving ourselves. We are faced with an international war. It's a war. And the elements of this war come from overseas. Who funds Boko Haram? Who gives them equipment? How do they get all those things that they deploy? You've seen videos where they deployed motorcycles, over 200. How are they flown in? All of these things go to measure whatever security game plan that we have put in place. And then it determines whether they are working or they are not working.
So, you have said that it's coming from it's foreign influence and
Yeah.
may be funded from some foreign organizations. But I don't have full details about that one. But let me ask you, Captain Adu, if he says that the funding of terrorist organizations, ISWAP for instance, Boko Haram, and even the Barnawi faction of it, what is the place of education in trying to look at a solution long-term such that we're able to tackle this, this issue of insecurity, recruitment of young, able boys, especially up north, to be part of this Boko Haram or even ISWAP?
Education plays a key role. Unfortunately, we did not position to exploit the role of education in what we are seeing today. Or let me put it another way. We had an investment in diseducation, which is now like 30 years old, and we are reaping exponential dividends, insurgency inclusive, because if you recall, for as far back as 3 decades now, I've been reading contentious, counter-contentious, religious, counter-religious issues surrounding begging in the north, for example, child begging, where children would rather be made to beg than to send to school. If you took a blind shot at a group of insurgents, you picked one and you took 30 years out of the leadership now, not even the foot soldiers, what is left of his age will very likely have made him that little Almajiri boy on the streets in your town in the 80s. So, what happened, what I'm trying to say is we spared the cub and now he's a lion. Exactly. So basically what you are looking at, education itself, if we decide to invest in it today as a means of re-indoctrinating the average Nigerian child mind.
Is there a timeline for reaping the dividends?
20 years. So if a child was born today and we got serious with that child about what I've just said at the National Security Agency level, call it project, whatever, then we are going to be seeing the first dividends in 20 years. And that's fair because it took us 30 years to get where we are. So it's the fact of the matter. Whether we have the heads and the imagination to join me on this frequency, I am thinking is another thing.
Mr. Rio, I'm wondering also because the spread of this insecurity seems to be just a frost across the country. And it's not just particular to the northeast or the northwest, but those are the areas where it is worse. Is happening worse. We have formations now.
Okay, yeah.
We have formations now. They call them initiatives. In the southwest, it's Amotekun, and then in the north, it's Chege Kafasa. These initiatives.
Yeah.
These initiatives, although we've seen just yesterday, or was it 2 days back, the Inspector General of Police came out to say that it will be fused. The community policing will be fused alongside what Amotekun stands for today. Hopefully it will get to Sheikh Kapasa as well as that in the eastern part of the country. But if fusion of all of this should happen at the community level, what impact do you think that will bring about curtailing security challenges that we're facing today?
If you recall, over 10 years ago, Tafa was the IG then, and it was mounting community policing. And I told the media then that he didn't understand jack of what community policing entailed.
You didn't?
Understand anything of what community policing entailed. They gathered a few policemen, sent them somewhere abroad. After 3 months, they were brought back and they were saying they were going into community policing. How well have we fared? If they had done well, we will not be where we are. So in the same sense, Amotekun, all the other groups, the initiatives, they have planned on different platforms. So they should better be allowed to run their race, supervised by the police. Not now being banded together with this insane and then very unclear idea of community. It's very foggy. Nobody has shown me any paper written on community policing with our challenges in mind.
Even though the IGP says it to be fused.
With our challenges in mind.
Even though the IGP says it to be fused.
Yes, when you say, what are you fusing?
Okay, that's a good place to let it rest. I must thank both of you. We're running out of time very quickly. Captain Aliu Umar retired, the security analyst, as well as Ario Dende. I want to thank you so much indeed for talking to us on State of the Nation, and to you for being part of the show. Many thanks indeed for watching. We'll come your way again the same time next week for a fresh package. I'm Gimba Umar. Bye for now.
Right.